So we're at the point where we know that the user did enter valid credentials. Now we want to use that information to generate such a JSON web token, which I showed you on the slides. For that, let's quit the server here, the node server, and let's install a new package. The package I want to use is called JSON Web Token, one word. This is a package which allows us to conveniently create such new JSON Web Tokens. We can now restart the server, and we need to import this into this file. So here, I'll import it, store it in a constant named JWT. The name is of course up to you. The JSON Web Token package, or the object it exposes. Now down there, after checking the password, I want to generate a new token. I'll store the token in a constant named token. And then here I'll use the JWT package, and there the sign method. This creates a new signature and packs that into a new JSON Web Token. We can add any data we want into the token. Like for example, we could store the user email, so access the loaded user email, and the user ID, access the loaded user underscore ID, and since it's a MongoDB object ID here, let's convert that to a string. So now I'm storing some user data in the token. Of course, you should not store the raw password in here because that would be returned to the front end, to the user to whom the password belongs, but still not ideal. Email and user ID should be fine, however. And then you need to pass a second argument, which is that secret, so that private key, which is used for signing. And that is now only known to the server, and therefore you can't fake that token on the client. I'll enter secret here. Typically, you want to use a longer string, like some super secret, or even longer. Also check out the official docs of the JSON Web Token and to learn more about it. I'll also set a third argument where I configure this, and there I'll set an expiry time of 1 hour with this syntax, so that the token becomes invalid after 1 hour. Now, this is a security mechanism you should add, because the token is stored in the client. Now, of course, by the client to whom it belongs. But technically, that token could be stolen. If the user does not log out, another person copies the token from his browser storage and then can use it on his own PC forever. Well, not forever now at least, because after 1 hour the token becomes invalid. So this is a good security mechanism, which is like a nice, finds a nice balance between usability, where you would want infinite sessions, and security, where you would want to limit this to like 1 second. Now this is a nice in-between solution, which is pretty common. So now we have a token which we can return to the client. So here indeed, I will now return a response with status code 200, where I add some data. We can add a message if we want, but I will only add that token which I generated and a user ID. And that is my loaded user dot underscore ID to string. Now that data needs to be provided because in the React app I gave you, I'll be looking for that ID and I'll be storing it. By the way, it should also take 1 hour because in that React app, I'll log you out after 1 hour. And all that storing and so on will be done by the frontend. Now I'll show you how it gets stored in a second, of course. So let's now go back to our auth route and connect our login route to our auth controller, and there the login action. And now with that, let's go back to the front end and work on the code there as well. So in the front end, here in the app.js file where we have the sign up handler, we have to look for the login handler here, and we should fix the URL there too. The URL is localhost 8080/auth/login. We need to pass an object where we now also change the request method to post and where we pass our data. So just as with signing up, we can actually copy that logic from there, the headers and the body, copy that and move it to login. We don't pass the name in the body though, but password and email will be passed. Now there's another small adjustment required. Here, you can actually directly access auth data email and auth data password. Now with that saved, go back to your React app and try logging in with the credentials you created a couple of lectures ago. It should work. This error still is coming from the status, which we'll fix soon. And here, we also see that I'm logging something. We see that token that was generated and the user ID. In your Chrome browser DevTools, you can also go to the Application tab, and there go to Local Storage, select your domain, and you will see that token here. That is the token we generated on the server. The other data is data I'm storing here, or that was stored way back by other applications, so we don't need that. That has nothing to do with our app. We have the expiry date, which I generate on the client to know when I should remove the token because it expired, and this is the token itself. Now you can also take that token and visit jwt.io. There you can learn more about JSON Web Tokens first of all, and you can also paste your token into that area on the left. And this allows you to look into your token. You don't see your secret, but you can now validate it. If you enter your secret, which you chose on the server, some super secret, then you should end up with the same token you copied in. And indeed, if I replace it, it does not change. And here you also see that payload data you added on your server side. You could theoretically extract that on the client too, and that is why you should not store super sensitive data in there. But this now also shows you that if I try to generate this token on my own, let's say I also edit it, like change the email address, the token changes on the left, and therefore if I edit this, it will not be validated, because now the token is not the same as it was when it was generated on the server with this secret. So if I try to generate my own one with a different secret, I'll end up with a different token, and if I try to edit the data in there, I also do. So I can't mess around with the token in the client, the server will detect this. This is how we can log in and how we work with tokens to know whether we are logged in. We're missing one important piece of information though. We have that token, now we also need to attach the token to requests that require authentication. Because right now, well, I am logged in, I only see these options after logging in, but theoretically, deleting, editing, and so on does not really care about the token. We should change this. We should also connect new posts to our user, and we should make sure that only users who created a post can edit or delete it. So still some work to do. Now that we're generating a token and we're passing it to the client, we need to make sure that the client can pass back the token to the backend, to the REST API, and we then check for the A, existence, and B, validity of the token before we allow the request to continue. So for example, on our feed routes, on all these routes, none of these routes should be public. So if no token is attached to the incoming request, we should simply block access here. And this is what I'll work on now. For that, I'll add a new middleware. I'll create a new middleware folder for this. You could place it anywhere though. And I'll name it isauth.js. That is the name of my file. In there, I will import my JSON Web Token package because we'll need that package to validate incoming tokens. Then I'll export one function in that file, and that will be a normal middleware function with request response next, so that I can use it as a middleware. And now I first of all need to extract the token from an incoming request. Now currently we are not attaching the token to any requests. How could we attach it? If we go back to our front end, let's say in feed.js for loading posts, we want to attach the token. How could we do that? There are a couple of options. You could add a query parameter. Something like token equals, and then enter your token value there, and then append other query parameters. That would be a valid option, nothing wrong with that. You could include it in the request body, but that is not ideal because, for example, GET requests have no body. So that is not a solution you should use unless you never have authenticated GET requests. A great solution is, however, that you use a header. It keeps your URLs beautiful. Of course, that might not be the most important argument, but still, it keeps your URLs beautiful. And a header makes a lot of sense for meta information like, well, the token, which it is in the end. So let's add a second argument in the load posts function in the feed.js file in the front end. A second argument there to the fetch method. And here I will add some headers to this request. Now I will not add the content type because I'm not sending any data here, but I will add the authorization header. Theoretically, you can add any header you want, but this is an official header, a header you officially use for passing authentication information to the backend. And please remember that on the backend, in the app.js file, where we added our course headers, I did enable the authorization header. You need to have that enabled for this to work. So now I'm setting my authorization header there, and I'm setting it to a value which is not just a token, but actually bearer, whitespace, and then this props token allows you to get the token in the React app. Why bearer? Well, this is just a convention to kind of identify that the type of token you have, and a bearer token is simply an authentication token. You typically use bearer for JSON web tokens. It's not a must, you could actually work without that, but it's a common convention, and therefore I want to keep that convention. So this is how I could add my token to that get posts request on the front end. Now on the back end, to extract it in my isAuth middleware, I will create a new variable or a constant token, and then access my request, and with the get method, I can get some header value. The header is the authorization header, of course, and there I will get this bearer whitespace token. Now I'm only interested in the token, of course, so I will split on the whitespace, which comes after bearer, and I'll get the second value, which is the token then. So this is the token. Now I will try to decode that. So I will actually use a try catch block because it could fail. And I will create a new variable here, decoded token. And decoded token will then be JWT, and there you have a verify method. This will both decode and verify your token. You also have a decode token, but this will only decode it and not check if it's valid. So definitely use verify here. And then you pass in that token, which you extracted from the header, and then that secret, and that has to be the same secret you used for signing the token, of course. So the same secret you used in your auth controller, this one. Otherwise, you'll not get a matching result. So this is the secret which we will use for validating the token. Now this could fail. So here I'll have a catch block, and there I want to add a status code to my error of 500, and then I will throw the error here. Since I'm in a middleware, now the Express.js error handler would take over. Otherwise, we know that decoding worked, and now I'll check if it is undefined, which would be the case if it didn't fail technically, but it was not able to verify the token. In this case, I'll create a new error, not authenticated, add a status code of 401, and throw this error. If we make it past this if check, we know that we have a valid token, however, and that we were able to decode it. So now I'll just extract some information from the token, the user ID, and I will store it in the request so that I can use it in other places where this request will go, like in my routes. And there I'll just access the decoded token, which now simply, well, is basically the part on the right here. We can now access that data since we decoded it. So there I can now access my user ID field, which I stored in the token. This will be useful for later, authorizing access to, for example, deleting posts, because now I know the user ID stored in the token, and that should match the user ID of the post we try to delete later. And then I can forward this request. So we'll either have an error if we have no token attached, or everything will be fine. Now we can add that middleware to our routes, and I will add it to my get posts route. So here, get posts should use that middleware. Therefore, I first of all need to import it by requiring it from the middleware folder is auth, and I will add it like this here. Now I only can get posts if I do add a token. First of all, let me show you how this fails if I remove this header, so this extra configuration on my get post request in the front end. If I remove that and I reload the page, I get failed to fetch posts, and in the console log I also see that here, because it fails to read split of undefined, we get a technical error because in my middleware it can't get anything from that header because the header is not defined. Therefore, we could add an extra check here and first of all get the header. Auth header would then be request get authorization. And if this is undefined, so if we can't find the header, then I will already create an error here. Not authenticated, because we don't even append the token, so we certainly are not authenticated. I can set my status code of 401, which is better than 500, and I can throw that error. And then down there, we know that we do have the auth header, so now we can split it. So that's an improved way of handling that. Now if we reload on the front end, we still get that error, but technically we now have a 401 error, which is better. Now I can add that code back where I add the token, but let's try adding some rubbish here, which is not a valid token. Now if that reloads, it still fails. And it fails because now the JSON web token package has a problem with the format of our token. So now let me revert this and add the valid token. And now as this reloads, now our posts load, because now we are validating this and we have a valid token indeed. So this is now how we can validate on the server side, how we can check whether the token is valid and then grant access. And now we just have to do that for all our routes before we then also make sure that only users who created something can delete it. Because right now, of course, well, I can delete everything, as you can see.